I'm Steve Krah. I live in Elkhart, Indiana. I've been a sports writer for 35 years. I'm a freelancer. I have my own website, indianarbi.com. I work for a number of newspapers and online entities. I've covered, I think, 50, 60 different sports in my lifetime, at least once. But I do a lot of your basic baseball, basketball, football, wrestling.
Okay. So why baseball in particular?
Well, I've loved baseball ever since I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, started playing Little League. There's just something about it. And I decided very young that I was more of a writer than I was a math and science person. I know a little bit about that, but not as much. Wanted to write about it. And, my teachers early on let me write about, do my book reports on baseball players. I
Oh,
remember
cool.
doing one on Bob Feller, who was long before my
Oh,
time,
wow.
but I got into that. And I remember, I think the first byline I ever had was when I was in the seventh grade, and we had a newspaper there, the Grissom Grapevine, which is in Mishawaka, Indiana, middle school. And the story was like 3 column inches. I wrote it, and my other two buddies said, "Put my name on there. Put my name on there," because they got credit too. And that kind of where it all launched, I think.
And that kind of is it. It's the recognition, but it's also that hey, there's my name in print.
Yeah, that was a kick at first, and I still get a little bit of kick out of that, but it's kind of become old hat in a sense because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, like I said, I've been doing it, since 1986 when I graduated from college. I went to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and my first job was in Brazil, Indiana, a little paper called the Brazil Times. Brazil is like 15 miles east of Terre Haute. The people know where that is.
Oh yeah.
So I was there a little over 3 years. As I told you before we started hit play, I was 4 months at the Zanesville Times Recorder, Zanesville, Ohio. Then I worked at the Elkhart Truth, Elkhart, Indiana for 25 and a half. And I've been a freelancer since August of 2015.
Okay. Well, now you may have the same experience that I had. I don't know. My dad was one of my baseball coaches as a little kid, and we would get done with practice. He only practiced like once or twice a week, and on the way home, I would grill him about what we just did, and not like a normal little kid. It's like, okay, when we were working on the cutoff play, where's the shortstop go? I didn't see where we didn't direct him. And he's like, kid, you're in fourth grade. What do you care about all that stuff? We're like, I want to know, and he would watch the game. We were Indians fans, of course. And he would watch a game. And when he couldn't watch a game and he had to go do something else, he'd say, okay, you listen to the game on the radio, watch it on TV, and score the game. And then that way, when I get home, I can see what happened. And I didn't really get what he was talking about because I would, score the game and I didn't think about it. And I realized that was a way of communicating. And then it evolves into writing and so on. So I understand what you're talking about as far as getting people to kind of listen to what you're saying and write what you're feeling.
Well, if you have to break the game down like that, even if you're in the fourth grade, you come to understand the complexities of the game or the beauty of the game, really. And I have a similar story to that. It's not exactly precisely, but I remember talking to a relative of mine years ago, and they were so close that I called them grandpa and grandma, even though they weren't really. And they said, and I talked to his mother, and she was 96 years old, and she became a Tigers fan because I lived in Lower Michigan. And she became a Tigers fan because she was told to sit by the radio and give a full report to her son because
Mm-hmm.
he had better know the chores by the time dad got home, from his day job, or, there was going to be some consequences. So
Right.
after she listened, and this game, of course, went into extra innings, and by the end of that time, she was a Tigers fan and could tell him what had happened. And back at that time, well, there was no TV anyways, so
Right.
you had to listen to the radio or read the newspaper the next day.
And you get those accounts from various people, and again from sports writers like yourself, and you feel like you've been able to see the game.
Right, you get to you're the eyes and the ears for those people. I mean, they may or may not have been there. If they were there, then you have a different perspective, and you kind of add to that. And in this time of COVID, they don't let more than about 25% in
Right.
of the potential fans into the games for nowadays. So I figure, I'm there when they can't be there, and they would love to be. So I don't take
And
that
one
for granted.
right, exactly. One thing my dad would do is he would watch the game on TV with the sound off and listen to it on the radio because that was a better way of communicating.
Yeah, I know some people that want to do that because they don't like what the
Well,
announcers
that
saying,
too.
or they're not annoying. And I said, well, that's what I think, and they should. I know that they won't sync up exactly because of the time difference, but I get the gist of it.
Well, and then what you do is you write the story, and even though we've seen the game before, we read the story the next day to confirm what we saw and to get more of a feel. If you've seen the game, you get a better feel of the game once you read the account of it because you're in
Right,
the moment as opposed to what you do afterwards.
exactly, and chances are most of the fans don't take the time or have the access to the coach or the players or
Right.
whatever, and that's something you get to do, so you get their perspective.
Well, let me jump to another spot here. We can get back to that in a minute. You mentioned in the time of COVID, what is the change that we're going to see in baseball, particularly the minor leagues in and around the Midwest?
Well, I know that it's a fluid situation, but the minor leagues have been pared down. They've already decided that of quote unquote affiliated ball, there's like 120 teams now when there were 160, prior to COVID. I think this might have been something that was brewing already, and that sped up the process. So that's one thing. Um, if you talk about loosely affiliated and affiliated, then there's actually more because I think Major League Baseball is trying to bring everything under their
Right.
wing. The summer collegiate teams and the independent teams won't be directly affiliated. Not that they're feeding them talent like they do now in the draft, but they will have a more of a relationship with them, and maybe they got the first rights to their players if they have that kind of relationship.
Leagues like the Cape Cod League, leagues like that.
Yeah, the Cape Cod
Okay.
League, the some of these other rookie leagues, the Northwest League,
Mm-hmm.
um, is now a summer collegiate league. Some of these things have changed, so they're still baseball, but they're not professional baseball in some cases. But these players, a lot of them had those aspirations.
It seems to me that that would increase the importance of what people like yourself do because now you have to be able to identify players better from the travel leagues and the high school leagues because those guys may not make a low A ball or rookie league team because either they don't exist or they have fewer people on the roster. So you have to keep those guys in mind as opposed to like, well, they're going to go play here, they're going to play there.
Well, I'm just telling the stories that are out there, and I think
Right.
everybody has a story, but there are going to be fewer opportunities, or at least the opportunities are going to look different because there's fewer teams. The Major League Baseball pared the draft down from 40 rounds to 5 last year.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys either didn't have the chance or they went back to college, um, that kind of thing. Now, I think going forward, the draft, I don't think it'll ever go back to 40 rounds. It may be 10 or 20, going forward. So it'll look different.
Well, what does that mean for the opportunity for, say, I'll use an example. He had connections like a Mike Piazza, someone like that who was a 62nd round pick. What does it mean for that guy who isn't going to be a draft pick in 5 or 10 rounds? What kind of opportunities will they have?
Well, I think unfortunately less. I guess that they really have to grind even harder. In Mike Piazza's case, and I've cited that example a lot of times, I think that was just a more or less a favorite of time in the sorter because he was the
Right.
godson of Mike Piazza. So let's pick him in the 62nd round. Of course, you know, few years after that, they didn't even go that deep in the draft.
Right.
It was really unlimited, and it just happened to go 62nd, or at least 62 rounds that particular year. But I think there's going to be less, or it will look different. They, instead of getting a chance to play for the Dodgers, say in Piazza's case, then they may try to hook on with a independent team, or maybe they will go and um, well, they play in Japan
Right.
during our summer, but they play in Australia. They play during our winter. And that may be a place to get seen, and then or go to Mexico or something like that.
Well, one of the
But there
things
will
I've
be
noticed.
opportunities that they'll just look different.
Okay, all right. One of the things I've noticed and this is more of a basketball thing, but I think it might feed into this with the one and dones and the fewer people getting drafted and whatnot. It seems to me that fundamentals have been given short shrift, and I'm not sure there's any correlation to that. But is it more? Will it become more the flashy player gets seen as opposed to the guy who's willing to grind, who's willing to take the extra base, who's willing to move a runner? Does he kind of go away for the guy that's hitting a long ball or touching 95 on the radar scale?
I think you're seeing that some now. I mean, the guys that can play can play. I mean, you got the um, Fernando Tatis Jr. Everybody knows what he is. He's one of the up and comers. He played in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I got to interview him when he
Oh, really? Cool.
played a couple of years ago. But they moved him up very quickly. Of course, he's that talented. He's proven that he deserves that opportunity. I think that's the way it's going to be. I mean, there's less levels. They're eliminating, and this is baseball I'm talking about specifically. They're eliminating the rookie league, and so they have been kind of learning as they go along. Even at the big league level, they're teaching them fundamentals and things that in past generations they might have known already, but they'll kind of do that. And the flashy ones, will get the first chance. The grinders. There'll always be room for grinders, I think, but they'll have to grind a little harder, I think.
Well, you've got the corner outfielder with the big arm that throws a laser and it hits the backstop, as opposed to the guy that knows to hit the cutoff man and they make the relay and they get the guy out the plate. Those I see those things kind of, and it's a general thing in my mind. Those things kind of going away, and those are the things. Well, they taught me in fourth grade, but still, those are the things they're not. I don't see that they're teaching at the minor league level because they're trying to get these guys to the majors. So I hope that doesn't go away. So I hope the grinders keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not sexy to hit the cutoff man and to do the basic things, but those are the things that help you win, your team win. I mean,
okay, now
I don't know how you market that kind of thing, and that's a big part of it nowadays.
He's laid down 4 sacrifice bunts, and he's got the runner scoring position 3 times. Put that on ESPN. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Now, looking at where you're at in Indiana, and you've covered for a long time, have things changed quite a bit as far as the college, semi-pro, high school, those levels in the last 20 years or so?
Yeah, it's getting better and better all the time here in Indiana, and I think that people agree with me when I say that. You talk about the grinding. I mean, we got some talent here, but you asked me about the weather when we picked up this call, and of course it's 28 degrees here. Snow is on the way. I live in northern Indiana, but that could be said for the whole state. It's going to be cold, and it is in the winter. You can't always get outside to play, as opposed to Las Vegas or Texas or California, these other places. So Indiana guys got to work harder. That's why you see them taking advantage of these indoor facilities, and those are popping up all over the place, and training. So there's a lot of talent coming out of Indiana. They just have to develop it in different ways.
And you do have to play travel ball and whatnot.
Travel ball in Indiana is huge. There is a complex that a lot of people that they follow the travel ball world will know about, but maybe not everybody. It's called Grand Park. It's in Westfield, Indiana, and Westfield is the first county north of Indianapolis. So from Grand Park in downtown Indianapolis, be about 30 minutes or
Okay.
thereabouts. Um, they have like 30 fields. They're all turfed. Um, they bring in players from all over the place. Colleges that be in February like to go there because they can get out and play on a turf field where you couldn't get the field in shape if they're playing on grass. So it's really, and it's right in the middle of the country, so it's easy to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other complexes on the way in Indiana, and that are not quite as big as that. If you could think of a small town. I don't know too much about the small towns in Nevada, but a town of maybe 1,000, 1,500, and imagine every square inch of that being athletic fields.
Right.
That's what
Right.
Grand Park is, because they've got, there's soccer's and your softballs and basketballs, and you actually have to drive to find those other places. That's how
Right.
big it is.
Yeah. That's an
So
idea of
that's
what.
that's kind of the epicenter of travel ball, but travel ball is, I don't know. There's hundreds of travel ball teams in Indiana. Some are elite, and some are you know more at the beginner stage.
Have you seen a change in, or is there a change in the importance placed on travel ball as opposed to playing in high school?
Yes, there's. I think that travel ball is basically killing. Well, I mean the youth leagues and the little leagues. I mean, not killing might be a strong word, but there's not nearly as much participation there. You know, there's a little league as the crow flies. It's like a less than a mile from where I live here, and it was one of the biggest ones in our district. And there'd be, at the youngest levels, there'd be 8 teams per league at the minor league levels, and now it's half that if you're lucky. They travel to other schools in the area to to fill out a schedule.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered the question. That's what you're driving
Really,
at.
you did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but this is what we deal with as we get older and as we see everything, changing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's better or worse. It's just different. I like your take on, is it better or worse, but it is different.
That's right. And as far as travel ball related to high school, I mean, there are a lot of coaches in high school that would like to have their own travel team if it's possible, because it can keep their own kids together. That way
Right.
they know that they're learning what they want them to learn, what they're emphasizing in their program. And some others know that, well, we can't really do that, or we can keep some kids here in our view, and we can take care of them, where let the other kids who can afford it or have the time or whatever go play for those good travel teams, see that kind of competition, and then blend it all together.
Well, we used to have the idea of be true to your school. That's what you did. I'll throw a gold surfer music reference in there for you,
Yeah.
but I don't think that that's necessarily.
Boomba.
Yeah, right. I don't think it really works that way anymore. Again, not that it's better or worse. I'm
not
an old.
not not across the board. I mean, there are some communities. I think if it's kind of secluded, and it's not a great big urban area, then you may have that, maybe by necessity. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen nearly as often as it did 20, 30, plus years ago.
Okay, so you've been detailing this for quite some time. Give me an idea, just on your knowledge of what you see, in your opinion. What is the state of baseball now, as far as the way it used to be? And again, I've gone back saying fundamentals, whatever. But what do you feel the game is like now, without comparison? Just how do you feel the game is holding up?
I think it's holding up pretty well. I mean, the training that they get nowadays, if they take advantage of it, um, it's the athlete, the actual athlete is probably better than they ever were if they're in there. They're getting strength and they're getting nutrition and that kind of thing. I think it's in a very good shape now. As far as we talked about with the fundamentals and those kind of things, maybe that stuff suffers a little bit, but I think the overall state of baseball is in pretty good shape, as it were.
Is it still America's pastime?
I wish I could tell you that it was. I don't know that it is. I mean, that being my favorite sport, I cover a lot and enjoy a lot of sports, but I don't know that it is. If it depends on what you define as pastime. If it's getting the most eyeballs, well, I think football and basketball get more of those.
And speaking of eyeballs, are we getting more eyeballs from the younger kids? Are they defecting to play other sports, or is there a reason for that? Because in my opinion, there are fewer kids playing baseball than there used to be.
I think that there is because I sound like you know I echo a lot of coaches and people that say you go out to a park and you don't necessarily see kids choosing up sides to play
Right.
baseball like you used to. I know that well we did that when I was a kid. I'm in my mid 50s or late 50s actually, and that's what we did. We had some land behind our house, and we did a lot of it was in my yard, but did other go down to Little Lake Park or whatever. You don't see that near as much. Everything has to seem to be organized. Of course, if you can find one hoop,
Right.
and you can either get one and put it in your backyard or go down to the park, there you go. You got basketball. If you can get enough guys to play 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, there you go. Don't cost nearly as much. You can get a basketball, and you don't even have to have the most expensive basketball. You can do that, and you're good to go. So it's not nearly the investment that baseball is, and you don't have to have as many people. Um, Football, well, football is more of an expensive sport, but that seems to do fine as well.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned having a hoop, and as an old former basketball coach, I my recollection is not a lot of the kids are playing. It's the same thing. They're playing in organized games that someone has to drive them to, as opposed to playing in the parking lot or the park or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it seems like it's the club sport culture. I know a lot of
right.
people that play club, fill in the blank. They play basketball, they play volleyball, they play soccer, what have you. That's the way it is. There's a lot of that going on. You know, spend a whole weekend going to place, or you fill the gym and you have all these basketball games or volleyball or what have you, but not as much just you know spontaneous games in the neighborhood or
Right.
anything else like that. If it's got to be organized, I don't know why it's that way, but it seems to have been that way the last 20 years at least.
Well, it's like you mentioned. You
Or
have to
more,
go
more
to
and
a
more so even now, but
right.
that's not a new thing.
Well, as you mentioned, you have to go to play baseball. You have to go to a complex that has baseball fields. And if you're going to play a series of games, you have to have more than one field. Whereas you can have
The
as
ones that
many.
are really into it will figure out a way, or even if that means playing wiffle ball in the backyard, which is a
Yeah.
blast. I actually did a story this past year about adult wiffle ball, and
Oh,
that's a big thing in some places. So, but they're kind of throwing it back to what they did as a kid, and they just ran with it. And it's also a chance for them to get together and with their buddies and have get some exercise, and there's the social aspect of that.
well, it's funny you say that when we would play wiffle ball as kids, each person's yard had a different configuration. So it was like this one felt like Fenway Park. This one felt like
Right.
Yankee Stadium,
You got to have your
and
own ground rules because you got
right,
a crab apple tree in your yard and I don't have
right,
one in mine. Or it's this field that we had when I was growing up. We didn't play wiffle ball out there. We do that in the front yard, but in the backyard it was like an oval kind of shape. In that there was a crabapple tree in center field, and I would guess that was 300 and some feet away. And then down the lines, there was more trees just past the baseline. So the baseline, it was kind of you know if you like Fenway Park, you got the pesky pole. Well, if you hit one straight down right field, it'd be about 110 feet. So we
right.
sort of fudged where the foul line was and made it further down there and put a barrel down, 55-gallon drum down there, and did those kind of things. But I did have, I like to say I had the first artificial turf back in the 70s, except it was reverse because my dad worked and then Lord owned a trailer in the trailer RV industry, and he would bring home remnants of carpet. And I was a pitcher, so we put the carpet down on the mound just so it wouldn't, the rain wouldn't wash the dirt away. So nothing else was carpeted, but the where I landed was. So, and we put up a backstop, so we had all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Oh, we had our field in our backyard, and we wore out the base paths. And then I moved back to that house 35 years later, actually longer than that. And I owned the house, and I'm mowing the lawn. And went, now I know why he was complaining about that. There's still no grass where those base paths were, So I understand what you're wearing out my lawn. It's like, so it's just grass. Now I know what it looked like. So, oh, well, when
Right.
we,
He didn't want the neighbors to say, "Hey,
yeah,
there's a
what's this
competition
kid
going
crazy
on
doing
there."
here? Yeah, what's this crazy kid doing back there? So, all right. So I asked this question of everybody when I talk baseball, and there's no right or wrong answer, but this is how I get a sense of what you like about the game. Favorite right fielder of all time
My favorite right fielder of all time, Hmm, Dave
that you
Winfield.
saw play. That you saw play.
Dave Winfield.
Ah, good call. That's a good one. I go with Dave Parker, but it's the same
I almost
basic.
said Dave
Yeah,
Parker.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the Cobra.
yeah.
Yeah,
I I
Dave
almost
Winfield. Just he
I
was just yeah, just he was just smooth, and he the arm he had, and we, of course, the hitter he was. Yeah, I say Dave Winfield.
now as a writer, did you read his book?
I did not. That's something I need to put on my
It was
list.
an interesting read. It really was. The background and the fact that he never or he didn't think of himself as a position player until he just about got to the Padres. He thought of himself as a pitcher. Actually, was a pitcher until then, and he hurt his arm somewhere in his
Right.
senior
You
year.
would. That's the cool thing about college baseball nowadays. I mean, we're talking about 30 plus years ago, but now you would get to see some of those games on the Big Ten Network
Right.
or whatever. You didn't get to see. You get to see him play football and basketball because he was that kind of athlete, but you didn't get to see him play baseball, and that ended up being the sport he chose, and he pitched. So, um, yeah, that's pretty cool. I only know he was a pitcher because I read about
Yeah, and myself as well. Yeah, but that's one of those stories you go, oh,
I
and
mean,
then he's
look at this big 6'6" guy. If he, I can see that he had the body type for it.
and he trailed along behind his big brother. That's how he got involved in athletics. So I didn't know he had a big brother. So and his brother I think played. He might have played at Minnesota as well, but he played somewhere, and then Dave came up after him. So yeah,
There you
but
go.
mine is Dave Parker for basically the same reason, except for the little bit of flash. The Pittsburgh Pirates, Dave Parker. After that, not so much. But the guy that came up with the Pirates, that was just insane. Was and when I asked those questions, when I asked that particular question, that's kind of where I'm looking at who do you value or what do you value in a baseball player. So then can hit for power, can hit for average, can throw, can field, can run. Yeah, that's that guy. So you passed the test.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. This is fantastic. If you would, it's www.indianarbi, and that's in capital letters, right? .com.
That's right. RBI stands for Reporting Baseball in Indiana. But I don't think you have to be specific about it. But Indiana RBI, just like runs
Okay.
batted in, except I use it for different.
Okay. And Twitter address? Do you have Twitter as well?
Yes, it's at Steve Krah, which is SteveKrah. That's my first and last name. So just keep it simple.
Okay. And as we said, we cover other stuff. What else do you cover that you were really happy to cover?
Well, this week I'm covering high school basketball. I do that quite a bit. I have wrestling, high school wrestling that I will be covering. I'm working on some previews of in Indiana. We call it the sectional. That is the first round of the postseason. We've been lucky in Indiana that in the girls tournament comes first, and we've gotten about 90% of the games that were
Oh, great.
scheduled played. through time of COVID. A lot of them have gotten bounced around, and some of them got left out. The tournament starts next week, but writing, advanced stories for the Warsaw Times Union. When I write, I will cover a lot of games for the Goshen News, and I've written other papers will reach out, and then the sectional for wrestling is the next. That's Friday, or that starts next week, but sectional wrestling starts Saturday, and that's a 4-week tournament schedule, just like all the other sports are.
You made me think of one last question, or maybe one question. I'll ask more of that. I don't know. What is it that you do as a sports writer that people don't realize that you do?
One thing that I do that don't people don't
Yeah,
realize.
they don't realize what goes into doing your job.
Well, I think people understand that there's a deadline, but I don't think they fully understand what that means until they'd have to be sitting in my seat. They probably see me in the gym, you know, hammering away. I got a kick out of a couple weeks ago. Um, it was I got a streak going right now of 3 weeks in a row. The junior varsity game went to overtime. Well, those kids deserve a little extra playing time, but it's like you can get it when it's the high school, when it's the varsity. So that's just the way it's gone. Well, this particular night, it was double overtime for the JV
Oh,
game, and the
geez.
varsity game went overtime. So I was
Oh,
really
wow.
pushing, the envelope. And then the photographer put together this GIF of me typing, and he posted it on Twitter. You can see it on my page, probably, or somewhere on social media about it. And I'm look like I'm typing 200 words a minute, which I don't, but you can see the sparks flying of them. So I don't think they fully understand what that's all about. Um, exactly. I mean, like I say, it used to be that you have time because the deadlines keep getting ratcheted up and up because they don't print the paper on site
Right.
a lot of places. So you have to get it done in time to do the production. So if it's just online, then you're basking in the time because you don't really have a deadline. But when you got a deadline, I guess that's it. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
How about the travel back and forth from gym to gym or field to field?
I kind of enjoy doing that. That's not a grind. I guess it depends on the traffic and the weather and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Traffic doesn't, or the travel doesn't bother me.
Well, I'll give you a real quick one, a real quick story. I was a JV basketball coach, and we had a foundation game in Ohio. We played a half, and the varsity played a full. No, we played a half, and the varsity played a full game. And this was against one of our crosstown opponents that we were in Ohio. It's 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. So we were a 4A school and Division 4 basically, and we were playing a Division 2 school. Not something we're supposed to be competitive in. And this is my first game as a JV coach, and we were tied at the end of our half at our time, and I said we should get to play another quarter. And everybody there that was basically press row looked at me like, sit down. We have things we have to do. We didn't come here to see you. We came here to see the varsity. And they didn't even consider the fact that
Yeah,
we wanted to figure
they've
out. Yeah.
been doing that kind of thing around here only because of numbers.
Right.
The school doesn't have enough to really play a full JV game
Right.
because they need to use some of those players
On the
in the
varsity.
varsity
Right.
game, and you're only allowed to, I think, play 5 quarters in one given
Right.
day. So for that,
Yeah.
for that reason, they do that. But if the JV game goes into overtime regularly, they play over. They play in
Yeah.
overtime. Now they play
That's
three and a half. They play 3.5 minutes instead of
shorter.
four. The
Yeah.
games are
Right.
7-minute quarters instead of 8 in Indiana. That's the way it works.
But in that situation, we were scheduled for a half, and that was it. And I wanted to get another quarter. Like, no, 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 no. We didn't come here to cover you. We came here to cover the varsity.
Well,
game.
yeah,
So
I
think
think
that's
they
funny.
have but just for selfish reasons, I'm going. Please, somebody win the game in regulation.
Foul him. Put him on the foul
That would
line.
be nice. I don't care. I'm well past the idea of who wins or loses. I really
Right.
don't care. I want a good story, but I don't really want the overtime
Right.
in the JV game.
Well, like you said, there are time constraints to all this. So Well, again, as I tried to wrap this up before, I never end up doing this the way I say I'm going to. So because
That's
there's
what the
always
editing process is for, right?
that's what I say, but I don't like to do that because I always
Oh,
leave
I've
some.
got you.
Yeah, I like, oh, that was good, that was good, because I usually edit me. I don't edit somebody else. So, well, again, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time. This is wonderful. And
Well, thanks for
once
thinking
we,
of me.
oh, no problem at all. Once we get into the spring and the thaw, and we'll see where we're headed. I've had a chance to talk to some people previously in minor league baseball, and I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to play out this year because of the cuts we've made and COVID and all that. So I think it's going to be interesting to catch
I
up with
think
you in
they
a few
have to
weeks.
have a season. I mean, they may
Yeah.
not
Oh,
fill
yeah.
the ballparks, but I think they're hurting financially in a lot of other ways if they don't have some games.
Well, you have towns that have this as a major aspect of their community, and just to say we're not going to have
Right?
it anymore,
There's
that's a
so
bit tough.
many. You think of a minor league park. I guess the higher up it is, the more seasonal employees they need, and those people are counting on the jobs where they're the vendors and parking lot people and on and on and on. So they may have 15, 10, 15 full-time employees, maybe less, but there's a lot of people that count on that. Plus, there's restaurants and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hotels and all this other stuff that the gains from people coming to town to see the game.
Well, I'll give you a quick little thing that they had the baseball winter meetings out here a couple of years ago, and I had the opportunity to sit in on the minor league side of it and to talk to the minor league commissioner Pat O'Connor, who, like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, we know people that know each other, so we had a little bit of a connection there. Really nice guy. He just retired for
It
in
was in
end of
it for
December.
37 years, I think, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, nice guy. We have people from our hometowns we know. Anyway, so I got to sit on the winter meetings, especially the job fair, and you see all these people that are interested in getting into baseball. And where do they start? They start in rookie league, they start in high A ball or wherever, and they're learning the business from there. And there were a slew of people there listening to other people talking about how you get started, what you need to do, this and that, and networking. And I can't imagine how many of those people have been displaced in this last year, and
Yeah,
how many
I
fewer
did a
won't be able
story
to do it.
about
Yeah.
a story about a gal who was coming out of college that got a job as the play-by-play announcer in Gary, Indiana, and then season comes along and they don't have a season. So
Yeah.
I think she, did the best that she could, and I think that, these minor league teams and even summer collegiate, they tried to do the best that they could as community partners and do things in the ballpark when lockdown wasn't happening and they could have things that meant be come get ballpark food
Right.
or movie nights or do online things or you know do things to keep people occupied. um, but they had
You
to
only
let
do
a lot
so
of people
much. Yeah.
go or
Yeah.
furlough them or something. So
Well, we will check back when we have more positive things. Not that this wasn't positive, but when we can find more positive things in the future, because I think it's going to be something where, yeah, like you said, it is fluid and it's going to have to stay fluid, obviously. But I think we will make adjustments and hopefully, I mean, I've been to the ballpark, minor league, Columbus Clippers in Columbus. I've been to several games as I was either in school or out of school at Ohio State, and I was located in Columbus, Ohio, and that was just a nice, hey, it's a Tuesday night, let's go down to the park and check it out. So I hope that they can continue to feed our passion for baseball, and I hope it happens soon because, like you said, some of these places they may not survive another year without baseball.
yeah, I'm with you. That's
Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
right.
Well, thanks, Steve. Like I said, we'll make sure we get this out to all the social media and everything. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.